Hello and welcome to From the Be-All End, and this is unfortunately the relegation debrief. Burnley's miracle attempt, or attempt at a miracle at Tottenham, ended in the misery that many of us had thought was coming this season, confirmed with a 2-1 defeat, and the Clarets will be in the Championship next year. I'm Simon Evans, and with me is Justin Connolly, Chris Bowden, Andrew Greaves, Paul Woodhouse, full squad. How do we take all that in? Justin Connolly, start off. What were your immediate thoughts upon the final whistle blowing on that game?
Well, obviously, it's terribly disappointing, isn't it, to get as close as they did, thanks to the sort of points deductions. Very, very disappointing. But I think the whole game was quite sort of symptomatic of the whole season. Really played quite well in the first half. Second half didn't really have much going on. It was just a massive deflation, wasn't it? After the sort of hope that we'd harboured over the last couple of weeks. I mean, I was sort of looking at it as a bit of a win-win situation. Either we take it to the last game of the season, or we put out of our misery. Sadly, it was the latter, but in some ways, I'm quite glad about that, because I know exactly what would have happened if we'd won that game. We would have just lost to Forest in the last game of the season anyway. So I'm sort of glad it's all over and we can start thinking about next season now, because this season has been. If last season was one of the best seasons we've ever had as Burnley fans, this season has definitely been one of the worst.
Chris Bowden, do you feel it's been one of the worst seasons watching Burnley?
Absolutely, yeah. I said it. I mean, relegation. I mean, promotion is just absolute jubilation, isn't it? No matter how you achieve it, Wembley, runners-up, champions, 100 odd points, 23 unbeaten. It's just fabulous. Late winners at York. It doesn't matter how it comes. And relegation is exactly the same. It hurts. It's upsetting, even though we know it's been coming. It's been coming for most of the season. I had a bad vibe. I said before opening night, as soon as I saw the starting lineup, etc. But it takes a while to get over, and you do get that sort of that sort of hangover briefly. I mean, 2 years ago, we felt it were coming for a couple of seasons, and it still hurt. And this is exactly the same. But this is the the undying beauty, isn't it? That at least we've gone down playing attractive football. If you were to see, to believe some reporters in the national press,
that's bollocks too.
Absolutely staggering. It just, let's have it right. We're not going to get 30 points. The three teams have been promoted. They're going to, they're going to have the lowest combined total for three promoted teams in Premier League history. The points deductions, Forest and Everton, it's correct that they've been punished because they broke the rules, but it's the only reason why we've extended the season. Luton have had a go, but I think I've Luton won once in about 18 games or something now. For all this heroic Luton talk, fair play, they've given it a better crack than we have. But you could talk about VAR, you could talk about injuries, this, that and the other, but it's not been right from day one. The shape, the structure, the whole philosophy of the team.
I think that article that you're referring to, which I think was a Sunday People praising Vincent Kompany and the beautiful football that Burnley have played this season, just to balance it out, we have put a couple out on our Twitter feed that I thought were very much on the mark. Andy Jones, friend of the pod, wrote a piece in The Athletic, which went through pretty much the whole story of the season, and I thought was very good. And Richard Jolly in The Independent, who does watch Burnley quite a bit, one of the hardest working journalists around, actually, is Richard. And he wrote a pretty scathing, damning piece in The Independent about the naivety of this season from Burnley and from Vincent Kompany. Greavesy, have you got over it? Are you still hungover by that final nail in the coffin yesterday?
No, like Chris said, it has been coming, you know what I mean? And it's that kind of prolonged agony. And I agree with Justin. I kind of, I had my kind of trot us up, to quote Danny Dyer, thinking we were going to beat Spurs, and especially when we scored, you kind of think we're going to take it to the last day, and if we take it to the last day, we're definitely staying up. But in hindsight, I woke up this morning thinking, thank Christ that was done and dusted, because I'm not quite sure I'd been able to kind of cope next Sunday with the tension of it, almost like 2 years ago. You just need to beat Newcastle, results go your way and you'll stay up, etc., etc. But yeah, I think just picking up on a couple of them pieces you've mentioned, I think there's a few people kind of, rightly picked a couple of holes in Richard's piece, and, a couple of people suggested you don't watch Burnley. I think the three of us, me, you and Chris, have seen Richard enough in the Burnley press box over the last kind of 7, 8, 9 years we've been in the Premier League to know that actually, Richard has watched a hell of a lot of us. I think I use the word pragmatism, and we use the word on the podcast pragmatism quite a bit at the early season. And I think, you can marry that up with naivety. That's the reason we've gone down. We weren't pragmatic enough, and again, even yesterday, we weren't pragmatic enough. And in recent games, we've kind of put a sticking plaster over a gaping big wound and got some results, but we've not got many wins, have we? We talk about this kind of, 3 defeats in 11 or whatever it works out at now. I can't remember the exact numbers now, but we've not won enough games, and we've not been pragmatic enough to see out games when we've been ahead. We've not been, everything about it, like you say, has just been, it's been shit since opening night. I mean, let's be honest, let's get it right. We were shipping goals for fun in them early games, and we kept kind of going, well, maybe we're just using this to hothouse experience and we're writing off these games. But how many games do you write off? And I think in Andy's piece, he says, there was this feeling that actually that running at the start was really tough, but then when you don't beat Bournemouth, and when you don't beat Palace, and when you don't beat Brentford, or you don't get results against these teams, then that kind of, well, we've kind of thrown a few games in to get us experience. It actually turns into a bit of a bullshit strategy, doesn't it? Because if you're not winning the games you've earmarked, and my famous wall chart was torn into a million pieces at several points and then re-sticky tape back together like on Blue Peter, but if you are going to target certain games to win because you think getting them results will keep you up, and this season's all about keeping up, and then you don't win them games, that whole strategy then just becomes this kind of, pot will eat itself kind of philosophy, which hasn't worked, has it? Let's be honest.
Not a lot has worked, has it, Woody? I mean, how are you coping with the grieving process?
Relatively well. It just feels, I can't get over the overriding sense that even how bad we've been and how deserved a relegation it is, it still feels like we've left a little bit, out on the pitch, so to speak. And it feels like an opportunity that we could have done slightly better than we did. Everything from recruitment to tactics, etc., all seems to track back to Vincent and how we've talked about his stubbornness, we've talked about the recruitment, we've talked about the goalkeeping situation. They're all self-inflicted wounds, as far as I'm concerned, that we didn't need to do. And obviously, hindsight, 2020, etc. But we've been saying this all bloody season, and so have a lot of other people. And that level of stubbornness, and so it's one of those. Does he learn for next season? We don't know, but it just feels, and especially the game yesterday seemed to sum it all up perfectly well. As much as it looked like we had an opportunity to get something out of the game in the first half, we played relatively well. In the second half, we just turned into passive Burnley. And of all the games in the season where you would have thought we may have gone a little bit gung-ho, we decided to, pull off them a little bit and look like we're trying to play for a point. And it just seemed absurd that, again, the substitutions were particularly poor yesterday. We never chased that game. We never looked like we wanted to really win that game yesterday in the second half. And it just felt like a summarization of the entire season. We just felt passive, clueless, tactically naive, stroked inept, and just not good enough overall. And we could have done so much better, I think.
Yeah, I think there's some good points there. It just feels self-inflicted. And the thing that made me a bit angry yesterday was like thinking back to earlier in the season and how many games we'd lost where the reaction afterwards seemed to be, well, yeah, all right, yeah, no, we've lost the game, but we're learning, we're getting better. It's a process, and we're getting there. And And it seemed like, I remember saying on one of the podcasts, like at the end of the year, you'll get to that stage and you'll be looking back on those games and thinking, if we'd really tried to squeeze out the 3 points, as we have done in the last couple of months, if we'd really tried to squeeze out the 3 points or get a draw out of a situation or hang on to something, it might have counted in the end. We weren't that far off Spurs yesterday in a lot of ways. I mean, what was it? 1-1 with 10 minutes to go away to Spurs? If that had been earlier in the season, we'd have said that was really encouraging. But at the end of the season, it's not enough. And it's because of all those thrown away points. And what did feel like a kind of complacency at the start, as though we'd looked at the fixture list with that horrendous run of home games at the start and said, season starts in November, really. It's just a learning process until then. That's what it felt like a bit, which is annoying when you're not that far away at the end. It's annoying. A lot of things about it. I mean, Chris, if you were to point the finger, there's no one reason why we've gone down. We've covered a lot of them. But if you were to point your finger at the one big mistake that's been made this year that you would blame for this downfall, what would you go at?
As we say, there's an awful lot more. But I think the most disappointing aspect of it all for me, and I say football's a game of opinions, and obviously Vincent's is the most important of all. But to not consider sort of Muric, who was the Championship's goalkeeper of the year, Benson and Zarori, it effectively didn't think those three were good enough. And I think there was a piece sort of probably about 3/4 of the way into the season. I think is it Matt who followed on from myself and Dan at the Burnley Express had asked Vincent about that situation, and the insinuation was that they considered that they weren't up to the challenge. And then yesterday you've got Benson going on to try and keep us in the Premier League, which is just bizarre. But if we'd have gone up with that side, or as much of that side that we could hold on to, given Maatsen, he wanted to take his chance at Chelsea, so on and so forth. The Teller thing just didn't happen, and Harwood Bellis, I can accept they chose elsewhere, went for O'Shea, who's done all right. But if we'd have gone down with most of that team and we weren't good enough, I think Burnley fans would say, yeah, that's fine, we accept that. But to then go down, we still don't know if Benson and Zarori are good enough at that level. And if we there's a potential scenario where we go down and it's almost like, right, can you two help take us back up again and do what you did 2 years ago? And what's the motivation for them? Mm-hmm. Well, all right, great, yeah. So if we perform again and we get tossed aside again, there's an awful lot of sort of man management needs doing over the summer. There's players who've a lot out on loan that haven't had the opportunity as well. He'll come back into play. The likes of Twine and McNally and people like that. And I don't know. That to me is the biggest issue. Not trusting a group that got us at 101 points and played the way they did.
Justin?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it all stems back to the decisions that were taken at the end of last season about whether the squad was good enough or not. And obviously, company decided it wasn't good enough. So we spent about 80, 90 million pounds assembling a second squad on top of the one that we already had that also wasn't good enough to stay in the Premier League. That squad that we assembled in the summer, almost from day one, was quite clearly not going to be capable of being all that competitive in the Premier League, and then the decisions taken over the course of the season have just seemed to have sort of compounded that. There was a stubbornness about things like the goalkeeper, but there was also, in some ways, they've also been a bit too flexible. The constant tinkering with the team, game after game, even when we've performed well. There's always one or two changes made. There's been a real narrative about company refusing to be flexible and insisting on this sort of Pep style high press and possession based football. This is coming from people who haven't watched us, because we haven't played like that all that much really this season. It hasn't been the beautiful game, has it? I mean, yes, on Saturday against
mad when I
Spurs,
read that stuff.
Well, they decided that was going to happen before a ball was kicked, and they've just stuck with it despite the evidence that's before their own eyes. And I don't understand why. On Saturday against Spurs, a lot of the game we played with like a 4-4-2 low block just on the edge of their box and kept humping it over the top for Brun Larson to scamper after. I mean, that's how we got the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you know, how do you watch that and go, yeah, Burnley are just trying to be a mini Man City and play that way? Because it just hasn't happened that way. He has been flexible and he has tried so many different permutations. But I think you just got to be left with the bottom line is the players that we signed. A lot of them have drifted away from the first team anyway. The players that we signed weren't good enough, and the players who amassed those 101 points in the Championship last season weren't given an opportunity to show whether they can do it. And let's be honest, if you Burnley's manager, 60 minutes or so 60 minutes on the clock, you need a goal from somewhere, and you're bringing Mike Trezor on after the season that he's had. You've gone down the wrong road somewhere along the line, haven't you?
I laughed when that happened. It was just ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, Greaves, when you think back to promotion and then the summer signings as well. I mean, we all did this. We all got excited about these summer signings, but ultimately, as we did try to point out a few times, they're kind of taking it on trust that they've been scouted properly and that they know more than what we're seeing on the YouTube clips. But when these signings happen, it's like, we've got a striker, we've got a creative midfielder, we've got this, we've got that. We were pointing holes saying, maybe need a left back, maybe need a holding midfielder, maybe need another centre forward. We went through all that. But generally speaking, it felt like, they've gone out and spent some money on some bright young talent. And have they just not been scouted properly? Or do you think that when Alan Pace talks about project and when Company talks so immediately after relegation, he starts talking about better days start tomorrow and all this kind of stuff, do you think that's because they bought these players with the coming season in the Championship in mind? Because I've heard some Burnley fans say that we built a team for next season in the Championship while they've been playing in the Premier League, which seems an absurd thing to do. But what do you think on that?
Well, today, as we're recording this Sunday, is day one of us being successful again. And I've had 3 pints of Guinness in the sunshine. So I'd suggest that my day one of being successful again, if we want any motivation, is going quite well. I think on the signings, I think part of the issue is, and there's 2 things that I'll pick out of the 2 of the 3 articles that have emerged. One, Andy Jones, I think, has the he'd spoke to a couple of agents and he said it's like Football Manager. I mean, it's literally, you're picking players like a Football Manager. And the likes of Mike Trezor and Zeki Amdouni and things feel like Football Manager regens, don't they? They feel like these kind of players we'd all have gone for in 97. They're playing at Ball and Genk and all this, Ghent and all this. And you kind of go, right. The other thing is in one of the other pieces, I think it was the People piece, it said basically, and I don't believe this to be true, Company pick people on whether they perform well in training. Now, I think there's some truth to that. And we'd got told that Zarori and Benson weren't perhaps taking training or giving training the kind of due respect that it should have been deserved. But I think if that is true, what we've ended up with is basically players who are spending weeks and weeks and weeks nowhere near the starting 11 or even getting on the field, and then being brought on to try and keep us in the Premier League, like Trezor, like Benson. I mean, it was almost, when Benson went down after 10 seconds, you kind of went, that's probably because he's not played. And suddenly you're kind of going, shit, we need Benny to cut in from the left and curl one into the top corner. You can't, maybe Benny's had a really good week in training this week and he's kind of gone, well, you deserve a chance. But you can't run a football team based on how somebody's done in an isolated set of training sessions. And if there is any truth in that, and I'm not 100% certain whether there is or not, this is why we get this really erratic selection of matchday squads where a player could be out of the matchday squad for 8 or 9 weeks, spending, Saturdays at the Trafford Centre, And it looks like Mike Trezor has, I don't know if anyone's seen the fancy headgear he was wearing at the community dinner. It was like something that Lovejoy used to wear, or Tim Lovejoy. We used to always accuse Ian
Tim.
This weird, like, Baker come flat cap. But then all of a sudden, you're not in the match day squad for 8 or 9 weeks, and all of a sudden you're in the match day squad, and you second cab off the rank when we need somebody to come on. But I'm only going to give you 6 or 7 minutes to go out and prove yourself. It's such a weird, disjointed way of managing a football team. We talked about the signings being unbalanced. We've got a plethora of wingers, but never really got that central midfield sorted. Never got the left back sorted until Assignon came in. We're really pissing about with right backs, let's be honest. We've pissed about with left backs. The whole thing is just, it reminds me a bit of Mike Bassett, I'll be honest. It's a bit, back of the fag packet or back of the vape packet, as it would be now in the modern kind of parlance. But, I'm in the company in. I think company will get this right. And I think them players will be fantastic next year. But it's in a league where we are going to piss it against a ton of teams in that league. I'm not saying we're going to run away with it, not going to say we're going to win it, but I'd be confident we'd be top 6 because there's a lot of dross in the Championship. Those teams who've survived this year, your QPRs, Plymouth survived, didn't they, I think? Sheffield Wednesday survived, did they? I can't even remember who went down. There's a lot of dross, and them teams ain't getting better. Sheffield United will struggle. Luton will struggle. Your Stoke Cities will still struggle. Your Rovers will still struggle. That division is full of dross. It was full of dross when we won it. It's full of dross this season. It's full of dross next season. So there's none of that jeopardy. And we've not been tested. And when we were tested this year, we fell miles short. And some of that is decision-making. I don't think Company's become a bad coach. But the environment he exists in, there's no jeopardy. We've said this again. I mean, Alan Pace, thinks he's the most beautiful girl in town who's going to walk out on him at some point. That is not the kind of relationship you want. I remember David Beckham hosting that party where he wore a sarong. Ericsson was there, Ferguson wasn't, because Ferguson wanted that barrier between him and his player. Alan Pace needed to have that barrier between him and his manager. Instead, he's in awe of Vincent Kompany, so there's no accountability. In the same way we accused Pace of not wanting accountability, Pace and the board from the outside look like they give no, don't just allow Vincent to get on with what he does. I think I still think he's a good coach, but the environment he's in is not conducive to anyone questioning at a proper level rather than a superficial level why are we struggling as much as we are. And we could look at the time they came back from pre-season. We can look at decisions they made, but it comes down to 2 things: the environment and an unwillingness to learn quickly enough from mistakes.
Well, talking about
further. Sorry, it goes back further. If you think the planning, we were to all intents and purposes promoted in January 2023. Yeah. So they go out and brought players in for next season, for the Premier League season. So you sign Ekdal, international, Sweden. You sign Al-Dakhil, who's on the brink of the Belgian squad and has subsequently made the Belgium squad. You sign Foster, another international. You sign Obafemi, who they wanted in the summer, and he finally gets his man. Now, obviously, Foster, he's obviously had his mental health troubles, blah, blah, blah. Started the season on fire, ended it with a whimper, really, if we're being, honest. But Al-Dakhil and Ekdal were cast aside before the season started. So you've signed them for the Premier League and bombed them as well. And he ended up with a scenario where Al-Dakhil is playing, 1 minute he's playing left back, left wing back, right wing back. He's a centre half. You go back to the recruitment and you go back to the man management of you bring Ekdal in for a couple of games, he does ever so well, and then you don't see him again. Yeah. just staggering, really. But
there was a spell there when he played Al-Dakhil at right back so he could play Connor Roberts at left back because he didn't want to touch Charlie Taylor. The madness of that now.
People are going to write PhDs about this shit, aren't they? The madness of Prince Vince. It's just like I said, pissing about with left backs and right backs when you had Charlie Taylor with over 150 Premier League appearances at left back.
I mean, Connor Roberts has gone now, hasn't he?
Yep.
That experiment clearly failed. I think it all really. This touches on a lot of what Simon was referring to before, which is this sense of complacency, this sense of the quotes after the game, the all this. Well, we've lost today. That we've got to take that on the chin and the disappointment of it. But tomorrow is another day, and we'll go. It's been like that all season, and even after the end of yesterday's game, it was a similar story, wasn't it? The most important thing is we've lost a football match and we're disappointed, and then there's the confirmation of where we're going to be playing next season, and that's just. But tomorrow we'll get back on that training pitch and we'll go. If I see somebody else, right, we go again on Twitter in response to one of these messages from the club. I'm just going to scream. You've got to assess what's happened with a clear head, and you've got to make decisions to take, but that are based on the object reality of what is actually happened.
100%.
You can't just sort of pretend that it doesn't. You kind of feel like the sense is, oh, we've lost, but it doesn't really matter, does it? We've got another game. There's another. We'll be playing in the Championship, but it's another season. We'll start.
It feels a bit brass-eyed, doesn't it? And they kind of convince celebrities to. It feels a bit like a fucking parody, doesn't it? It feels like Little Al coming out forever forward. And what's the wanky phrase Castor use? What never stops? Progress never stops.
Better
never stops. Well, better never freaking started, did it this season? Let's be honest.
It's like what he was saying, though.
Man City is the worst we will play this season. And then after we'd shit 40-odd goals in 2 games or whatever it was, stopping conceding goals is the easiest thing in the world. It's just we can't be bothered doing it, though. So we just...
But it does really annoy me. It really annoys me what Justin is talking about there, because you go down, and it's true. I think we've been lulled into a false sense of security by the fact that we bounced back the last couple of times with relative ease, because it's also possible, and this thought just went through my head yesterday, and people will go mad about it because of the squad we have, but we don't know. We don't have a clue what squad we're going to have next season. We're not going to go into that today because there's 1,001 questions. It'll take forever. But I just looked at it and I thought that might have been the last Premier League game I see Burnley play. It might have been, because we've been relegated. That thought used to go through your mind when you went down, but we've convinced ourselves now that we're going to storm it. We'll storm it. We'll storm back up. We did it last time. Vince knows what to do in the Championship. I'm not even buying that, to be honest, because if just because he won it once doesn't mean he's going to win it again. Yes, the team he had was a very good team, and he did a really good job with it. Not taking that credit away from him. But also, he's done a lot of things in the last 12 months that raise a lot of question marks about his ability as a manager. And I just think, take it seriously. Also, I mean, I don't know what I'm going to throw this to you anyway, Woody, but say whatever you want. But I was just going to say that JJ Watt comes on, Alan Pace comes on with their messages. Within minutes of that game finishing, we're being told, cheer up, look at these pictures of us last year when I was on top of the double-decker bus. Look at, Alan Pace says, we'll continue going forward. We've just gone backwards. We've literally gone backwards. And he's saying we'll continue going forward. I mean, but also, can't we just have 10 minutes like we have been messaged by people who don't message us with anything concrete or information about what's going on at the club, never tell us anything we want to know, but within 5 minutes of us being relegated, they're like, cheer up, it'll be great next season, we're building the project. I don't know. Whatever, Woody.
It feels this is gaslighting, isn't it? I think you make a very fair point. We don't necessarily hear from them for God knows how long. Then within 5 minutes, we're suddenly airbrushing this relegation out of our history, and it'll just disappear. It'll be compartmentalized, and it'll just be, we won the Championship, then we'll win the Championship again. We've said it before. This Poundland Pep figure, whose aura has obviously been tarnished quite severely this season, we said, if you take a step back and you say, we've got a manager who's never managed in the Premier League, who signed a bunch of fucking 19-year-olds who never played in the Premier League, with a board that has only relegated us from the Premier League. What the fuck did we expect to happen? We were the fucking idiots who were sat around going, that's a good idea. Let's buy into that as a project. And now they're trying to turn around and say, well, this didn't necessarily happen. You know, let's move forward and let's move on. Fuck off.
But it is. It's people, for all the fans, and I can completely sort of understand their experience, that they're sick of the sort of the corporate nature of the league. They're sick of VAR. They're sick of being patronised by pundits. They're sick of this, that, and the other. But it's precious being in the Premier League. Like Simon says, you can't take it for granted. They might not be come back for a few years. But I just thinking, I think we've squandered a year in the Premier League. We've thrown it away for a project. We knew previously when we went up with Owen Coyle, we were nowhere near good enough. Look at that bloody squad that went up, and be amazed that they took it to, you know, even after losing Coyle to Bolton, took it to 3 games to go, got to 30 points. Unbelievable. You know, you win. You know, you come up with Sean in 2014, and we're nowhere near good enough, and had a bloody good go at it. And even took it to the last game when we were bloody garbage 2 years ago. But we've thrown a year away on a vanity project. And there's no guarantee we'll bounce back. Fingers crossed they do, but no guarantee.
There is no guarantee. There is no guarantee. And I agree with Greavesy that the Championship's not great, and I don't see us like plummeting. But let's see what team we have at the start of next year. I mean, that's something we can talk about next time, when maybe we've all calmed down a little bit more and sort of reflected on this, because it has been a terrible season. And but there is another season. There is a future to look forward to. And we're going to do it. We're going to be here all summer talking about our transfer signings again. We're going to be looking on YouTube and going, you know what? Is he the Swiss Messi, this guy? You know, we're all going to go through it again. We will do, because that's what we do, isn't it? You know, that's it with Burnley fans. We were there watching it in far, far worse situations than we're in now.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Let's leave it at that for this week and come back with maybe a little bit more thoughts on the future and everything ahead of the Notts Forest game on our usual Friday podcast. But until then, thanks very much for joining. Hope you can enjoy this week, and you can put this miserable season out of your minds a little bit better, perhaps, than we did. All the best, and cheers, and up the Clarets.